I'm Myles. I'm the last minute moderator, replacing Aaron.
Good morning, attendees. Breakout session on Wednesday.
Myles, you can start.
Yeah.
That was the cue.
And I think it goes without saying, I haven't gotten to meet Aaron yet, but I've heard that they're amazing, and this panel was near and dear to them. Aaron, feel better? Okay, so we're joined by 4 great panelists today, and we're going to kick things off by having the panelists introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about why they're here to talk about burnout and what burnout means to them. Would you like to start?
Sure, I will start. I'm Swarna Podila. I'm the community manager for Foundry community. Burnout is, it has always been a near and dear kind of concept for me. I honestly, until I moved to the US, I did not know that we had a term for everything. And recently, very recently, I came to know that there are pretty much anything. The little tapping sound that my son always makes because he's a perfectionist. There's a term for that, and there's a term for why I always used to feel demotivated and not feel like dragging myself out of the bed because I was really finding my job intimidating or overwhelming or just so many things. I did not know what to call it, but I was like, I do not feel like going. And even as I started driving, I would feel like, can I just crash my car so I didn't have to go to the office? It went to that extreme, and that's when I realized that there was a problem when I could crash my car with 11-month-old waiting for me in the house. That's when therapy became really a friend of mine. Until I went there, I did not know that it was burnout, and there were just so many factors associated and that caused me to go to that kind of place. So I have come a long way, and I think at least recently I have come to realize what triggers that again and what doesn't, and I have slowly learned how to compartmentalize and realize or learn how to step away. There's a lot of unlearning that has to happen because we're so used to so many things. So unlearning has been a big part of my learning process. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you so much, Swarna. And then just one thing I forgot to mention earlier, we're going to be talking about some sensitive subjects, so if you kind of feel overwhelmed by what we're talking about, or maybe it's not what you want to be dealing with it, early in the morning.
9 a.m.
Yeah, it's totally reasonable to get up and walk out. You're not hurting anyone's feelings. But just we had all discussed this earlier, and so just as kind of like express permission to all of you, if you need to get up at any point, do it. You don't need to raise your hand and ask permission or something. Noah, would you like to tell us a little bit about your own personal experience?
Yeah. So I'm Noah Kantrowitz. I'm the infrastructure lead for a company called Ridecell. Why I am here? Because I have seen far too many friends and felt the effects myself just be utterly destroyed by burnout and all of the sort of spirals of dread and guilt and bitterness that entails, which leads into what burnout means to me. The way I usually describe it is along 3 axes. The guilt axis of like just feeling like you owe something to your coworkers, to your users, to your end user community, and that you can't possibly live up to that. And then the bitterness axis of like, I hate everything and I can't stand any of these people and I never want to do anything like this ever again. And then the dread axis of just complete existential angst of even setting foot in the office or opening your ticket queue or reading one more pull request. Just being unable to even think about it. Yeah. All of those in different mixes depending on where I am in my life, but all of them have been, unfortunately, lifelong companions.
Hey, I'm Stephen Augustus. I'm a senior cloud native architect at VMware, former CoreOS Red Hat, but before that, lots of jobs that involved holding plates or balls up in the air, so DevOps, SRE, production engineering. And you kind of find in those jobs, and especially in the open source community, that there are you don't have any one role, right? You're again holding all of these different things in your hand and trying to balance your time across multiple time zones, liaising with the right people at the right times. So the synthesis for this talk actually was after KubeCon, right? So I had essentially locked myself in my hotel room. I was like, I can't people anymore, and just tweeted about that, right? And then you're scrolling, you're laying in bed scrolling through Twitter, and a lot of people are saying the same thing, right? And we're like, wait a second, we're part of the same community, we're feeling the same way, like we should talk about this, right? And I think we all like to talk in this kind, so we're like, hey, let's get together and really talk about it. So.
Hi, I am Paris. I work at Google Cloud in the Open Source Strategy Office. I work on Kubernetes. I'm here because I have burned out in the past. Unfortunately, did not at the time think that it was burnout. I thought that it was me, and I checked myself into a mental facility at the time, thinking that it was something else. And this was in my 20s, I'm in my 30s now. So I have lived a lot of years after that. And I think that it's super important that we talk about it, because if we don't talk about it, we do tend to think that it's other things, which it could not be. And I didn't necessarily think that it was stemming from my work at that time. I have been infamously known to mix my hobbies with my work and be very passionate about both things. And unfortunately, that does burn both ends of the candle. And with that said, I just did not add that up at the time. I thought that there were other things going on, like I said. And of course, now I feel like I do teeter on the edge of burnout as well. And there is, I think, a difference between stress and burnout, and it's important to know the difference to that. So I am here to discuss some of my experiences.
Well, one thing that it seemed like I was hearing from all of you is how important it is to talk about burnout. So not to get too meta about it, but why do you think we're not talking about it? Why do you think it's an undiscussed thing?
So I think there's this preconceived notion of kind of like Paris was saying, like, is this a me thing, right? Am I failing at my job or my role, or am I disappointing someone? And you really internalize that instead of like spreading out to your community or realizing that you have a set of people to really talk about it. So I think that's a big part of it, like the preconceived notion that you'll be perceived in a certain way.
And that plays a big part, because when I was starting out in my career, I did not want anyone to look at me as a failure. So I would start taking on things. Saying no was extremely hard, because saying no felt like I'm going to look like I'm not capable of accomplishing things. So that really ended up causing a lot. So I think the stigma definitely exists. The more we talk about it, the more everyone understands that it's perfectly okay to say no. It's perfectly okay to draw a boundary where we define what we can do and what we don't want to do. It's not like we cannot do it, it's that we don't want to do it because it's going to really affect us, and the effects are sometimes permanent.
I think another big part of it is that in tech, a lot of us really define ourselves in terms of our jobs in ways that are maybe very powerful at times. I mean, we talk a lot about passion, and like I love what I do. That is fantastic, but it does have some drawbacks sometimes, and it does make those boundaries a little bit more flimsy than they should be, especially when we start to like fetishize passion, and that if you don't love what you do, it means that you are implicitly bad at it, which, like, sometimes a job can just be a job. That's okay too.
Yeah, plus one, I think, to all that. I think that it's super important to realize that it's not you. Yeah.
So it seems like we're touching on some of these ideas around what kind of patterns or what kind of behaviors are kind of toxic that cause burnout. And these could be either community patterns or patterns that we're doing as an individual. Do you have some more examples of these kinds of toxic patterns or behaviors in communities that we should be adjusting, perhaps avoid burnout?
Not having any hobbies. I'm dead serious. I came out of my 30s asking myself who I was. I think there was a point in time there where all I was a community manager. And I do feel a lot more whole now that I've gone through life and lived life a little bit longer. But I think it's important to be whole you, and that includes other things outside of work and what we do with technology and advocacy and things like that. Even activism outside of technology. I mean, that stuff is tiring. So it's very important, I think, to have other things outside of this world. And I even see engineers who say, oh, well, I have hobbies, I play with Raspberry Pis on the weekend. And I'm like, well, you're an engineer, you kind of already do that during the week. And it's sort of just in this kind of same like tinkering DIY realm that we all know and love. But it just, I feel like, still plays into it just plays into that, I think.
So yeah, so I think that having definitely, I was going to mention the hobbies thing. So it's one of those things where if you're so I work from home, and the laptop is always there, right? And so on Wednesdays I co-captain a pool team, right? It's one of the things that forces me to close my laptop, go interact with my friends, right, and have a support system that's outside of tech. I think that we're constantly in this mode of what's myself outside of work, and working in open source communities where cultivating the community is your day-to-day job. It's hard to define what that self is outside of work, and like those things are still on your laptop, right? So when I work on Kubernetes, what's the Kubernetes that I'm doing for work, and what's the Kubernetes that I'm doing for fun, right? That sometimes that line gets a little squishy. Right, so defining that stuff, being able to put down the laptop, and having a community and people and hobbies outside of that is really important.
It's also it goes to the monkey see, monkey do kind of statement, right? When you see someone else kind of spending their entire weekend time doing Kubernetes for fun, or Raspberry Pi, tinkering with Raspberry Pis on the weekend, now you feel kind of that pressure, subconscious pressure that you are probably expected to do the same thing or something similar. Or when you see your team or your community do something like, oh, I need to have a non-tech kind of hobby, or I need to look for something that does not involve tech, that kind of recharges me. As my juice is draining, how do I charge myself? How do I kind of take that time for self-care? It could be just sleeping, it could be reading a book, it could be gardening, or for people like me, it could be just doing nothing. Literally, I schedule time to do nothing. Those are the kind of things that establish that kind of culture in the community, especially in a technology space like Kubernetes, where it's really the hot, shiny thing, where you're always trying to do something brand new, or you have to prove yourself, or you feel like you have to outdo yourself all the time. It really gets to you after a certain time. So I think it's really important to establish that culture and spread that culture where we encourage people to do non-tech things, or things that they just love. Sometimes cleaning for me is therapeutic, like house cleaning. So just sharing that others, talking about those kind of patterns, it's really helpful.
I will say that sleep is one of my big topics too.
Sort of going a different direction with the answer. I think another, not to invalidate anything that was said, but just to bring up a different piece of it. The term savior complex has a lot of problems as a term, but especially in open source communities, which if we're here, we probably all care a lot about, or we wouldn't have dragged ourselves into the middle of nowhere in California to talk about them. But I have seen and felt a lot of times I must do one more thing because if I don't do it, no one else will, and that is unacceptable. That is a really slippery slope. Maybe not even a slippery slope, just like a straight up slide into burnout. And yeah, that is a problem. Trying to figure out how to hand off responsibilities in a way that makes everyone feel comfortable is a big deal.
So, I mean, to that, I specifically in the community, a while back I was a production engineer, and I was working at this startup where they were like, hey, we need someone to come in. We're primarily bare metal. We need someone to come in that has AWS expertise. and build the bridge between our AWS services and our bare metal services. And I was like, I'm that guy, I'm ready for that challenge. The problem there was I was the only one doing it, right? We had a global on-call rotation, thousands and thousands of servers, and I was the only one owning the products for 2 of the teams, right? So that turned into 14-hour work days, and and kind of like having this existential dread, like, can I do this? Am I actually good enough to do this?
Hero ops.
Yeah, hero ops, and by way of that, and like finally getting out when I thought I was supposed to, by way of that, there are things that trigger me in the Kubernetes community that I will never touch, even though they're really exciting, right? So things like working on Kantrowitz and doing anything around moderation, anything that looks like support. Working on any of the test infra, which is really exciting stuff, but like it looks too much like SRE and production engineering that I can't touch it.
So, we were just digging into, some of the patterns that cause these problems. We hinted at some of your own solutions. But maybe we could dig a little bit more into what are ways that you've found are effective at dealing with burnout, and how have you kind of protected yourself? Or maybe haven't. I'll let you take it from there.
As far as the protected myself is concerned, it's something that I actually constantly get ragged on about, is I actually have 2 cell phones. Everybody always says, like, oh, Dr. Paris entering the room. And I'm like, oh, the Kubernetes needs surgery today, like, gotta dig in. But no, seriously, 2 cell phones have saved my life. I think that's actually made it's made me not cross the wall of burnout, to be honest. And people always say, oh, you can turn your notifications off. And it's like, well, when you're moderating 75 platforms and and people will find you. Trust me, people will find you. It's really hard to do that. So I keep a work phone, and when I'm on vacation, the work phone stays home. And I only have Slack installed on my personal, and then that can obviously get notifications off. So I think those things have been a savior for me, and it's something very simple. But I did used to live and die by my phone. I still sort of do. If you see me walking around the hall, my Bitmoji is the one that has the cell phone shoved in her face. That's me, but it used to be, trust me, even worse. I think it was an appendage at one point in my life. And just being free from that, a digital, electronic appendage is probably the most freeing thing you can do to help yourself not go through burnout, I think. And just shutting down completely is my very specific tip.
No, I was just gonna say I completely live that, and I don't have 2 cell phones anymore, but I do explicitly turn off the notifications. I use all sorts of accessibility features and the notifications features actively on my iPhone, so that has helped. And I guess the most important way that I have started recovering from burnout is life is too short, so I choose the people that I really want to work with. I explicitly choose the people that I don't want to work with, and I stay as far away from them as I can. Even when they reach out saying, hey, I have this exciting opportunity. Of course, the opportunity is really exciting. It could be a great company with the exact job title that I want. The work responsibilities are pretty exciting and really tempting, but I still say no. It's really hard to say no for me, but I still say no because I just don't want to work with them, and I don't want to work in that kind of culture or environment that they have set for me in the past. Maybe they have changed, but I don't want to take a chance. So identifying that has helped me a lot, and also identifying that it's perfectly okay to say no, to my previous point, that it's okay to draw a boundary and say that I just cannot do it. I just have too much in my plate. If you want me to do this really badly at this time, tell me what else I can just drop off my plate, because I don't want to overpromise and set myself up for failure in terms of the burnout. I don't want to go back into that route again, because my past experiences still trigger me, and every time I think about those kind of days, I still wake up with nightmares and sweating palms and forehead. So I don't want to go back into that during my
So it was mentioned briefly before, but like, number one thing, find a therapist. Like, professional help is an important thing. There are people that are actually like trained in dealing with this. Like, we're all just kind of making this shit up as we go. There are people that are actually like taught how to do this, and they can help you in doing it. And like, also like, for me, it's less like psych medications. Like, I more am like careful about medicating physical symptoms, but still like, that is not failure. You are allowed to take care of your meat shell, and like, that is a big part of coping with burnout and eventually recovering from it. Like, you have to be physically capable of surviving it, and that is not weakness. You should do that.
So I think there's a meta question too, that it's about sense of self and about like where you see your career or you as a person evolving to. I think that it's important. Like, every now and again, you step back and I try to do the 1 year, 2 year, 5 year plan, right? Where do I feel like I should be moving, and try to only pick up the tasks that, so to speak, spark joy, right? Anything that doesn't spark joy, I'll kick out of the queue. So I think it's really important to prioritize the things that make you feel like you're moving in the right direction, whether it's around your community, around your career, around your internal life. Was my 401k good, or things like that. But everything that's on the long list of like my current to-do list is 130 things, right? So it's like it's not sustainable. But I look at those things and the stuff that I go, yes, I want to focus on that, or I'm going to need that eventually. I make sure I prioritize, right? So everything else falls off until I get that done. So I think part of that, just recognizing what you as a person wants to do eventually moves you in patterns to shift yourself away from the people that might be toxic, or the patterns that you're used to that might be toxic.
Another piece of it for me is being mindful of who and what I owe. So like, there are definitely places where I have promised to do something, and while that can always be renegotiated, like, if I have made a promise, fine, but like, I have not made a promise to every Kubernetes user that I will help them deal with install issues. Like, that is not my job, even if it sometimes feels that way internally, but just trying to be constantly aware of, I don't need to answer every question. Yes, it sucks for those people, but like, I cannot personally take on that burden, even if I sometimes want to.
Yeah, so I think the promise piece too is, again, it's like having open and honest communication with certain people, because you may say, hey, I know I said I was going to get you that thing on Friday, but this week is a killer, and if we can shift over and have that meeting on Tuesday next week or something instead, and usually people are pretty amenable about that. Like you said, like, just really saying what is on your mind, and like taking feeling that you can take how you feel into account when having that conversation is important. So I actually think Kim had a question. If you,
I guess I can ask it now. Paris, as you were talking about it, between stress and burnout, other than wanting to do what Swarna did in cars. But how did you recognize that?
Therapy.
Okay,
Yeah.
what did they?
I think that just talking it out, and I think someone this week at Xscale, actually, we were talking about this, which is awesome at Scale, like a Linux conference, we're talking about burnout. I'm like, yes. We were talking, and they made the statement that, oh, I survived burnout by taking a vacation to Ireland for 4 days. And I'm like, that wasn't burnout, brother, that was stress. Like, you don't just get over burnout in 4 days. Like, that's just not a thing. You get over stress in 4 days. Like, you get over feeling like shit in 4 days. You don't, like, burnout is when your anger is so bad that you want to burn it down. Like, you literally need to walk away. That's why when I think we've probably seen plenty of employees in that state where they make everybody else feel like they feel. and that like toxicity inside, and like they can feel it too. Whether or not they want to be honest with themselves about it is one thing, but I think that's kind of how you can even look at it in others when it's just they're, constantly bitter and angry and feeling like they're out of control or they're overwhelmed to a point where they can't even delegate. That's, I think, where we cross the line of stress and burnout. Like if, stressed is, oh, I've got a deadline this week and yeah, maybe I might have to bust out a 9-hour day or a 10-hour day on Wednesday, and oh damn, I just missed my nail appointment, and life, right? I don't think life is intended for burnout.
Yeah, so I think it's also like sizable too. Like stress doesn't disappear. And there are magnitudes to what it is day to day. Like family member is sick, and I have to plan for that, right? That's that's a different type of stress that doesn't just disappear, right? I've missed my nail appointment, or I just got this blowout and right, and it's really windy out right now. Like that, there are all these like different buckets of stress, and I think stress management is it's part of helping stave off burnout. But it's burnout is this slow hill, and once you hit it, you just ride that you ride that line for a while. So trying to figure out how to get to the point where you can cut that off before it even happens, because once you get there, you're there for a while, right?
So just really quickly, we have about 2 minutes left right now. So if the panelists want to maybe have some parting thoughts for people, just kind of what is the most important thing to leave people with?
A couple things I would say: know and understand boundaries. That's something that sounds silly, I think, in a room full of extremely intelligent adults, but that's something that I honestly did not learn until I joined Google. And I am well into my 30s. That's not something that I was raised with. My parents, looking back, had zero boundaries. Zero. My mom's probably in the negative at this point. And I just did not know what a boundary was. And that also, like I said, leads into work, especially when your work and your hobbies are the same. And then also, we are all in open source. The terms owner and maintainer do come with a level of anxiety for a lot of people because of past precedents to what it means to be an owner and maintainer. So please, if you see people who are owners and maintainers, help them delegate. That's one of the hardest things to do as you are in an overwhelmed state, is to delegate. But be helpful. Don't just say, oh, how can I help you? Think about very specific ways that you can help them and start taking that off, because that is the most important thing, so that they can just get a minute to think. So that's it.
I would say talk about it really. It's talk. Say and be honest in your communication, right? So there are people who are here to help you, right? When you need to delegate tasks, when you need to do different things that may not be in your primary scope of work day to day. So feel comfortable finding your community and being honest with them.
My biggest takeaway would be that, especially in the open source world, it is better for you to be a happy and healthy person than to be a productive person, and that productivity is not the goal. Being a good, happy human being is the goal.
For me, it's jobs come and go, technologies come and go, open source communities come and go, but relationships, they stay forever. And that relationship also includes the one you have with yourself. The one we have with ourselves is the most important relationship that we always have to maintain and do whatever needs to be done to just make sure that we are healthy. And as Noah said, healthy and happy is way more important than productive. For me, it sometimes meant turning down a really lucrative job, turning down a really appealing location or a really amazing career path, but I would rather trade that and trade job titles or career paths or VP, CMO type of titles than trading my happiness and solitude. So figure out what makes you better, figure out what turns that charging battery kind of a thing green for yourself, and do what you gotta do.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you all of you for being.
Thank you.
I have questions. Have you guys thought of how to change the definition? Because that's what ends up doing this kind of thing. Like we're pushing a little bit further, doing a little bit more, and trying to upstage the other person who may take over if I don't do it kind of thing. What is that definition of success? Are we changing that at all? I mean, we're talking about this, but are we really doing that?
Yeah, so I think that's the meta point that I was trying to make. Like, figure out what you want to do. Your success is different from someone else's success, right? So like, step back and look into yourself, have that relationship with yourself, and talk about like what you're trying to achieve, right? So I think success is very different for everyone. So don't try to live to someone else's standard.
Also, don't associate with people and organizations that value competition over collaboration. Like, just there's not time in my life for those people and those groups.
And just one last point, don't let others define that success for you. It's really important not to let even your spouse or your kids define that success for you, because what works for them or what is success for them is not. Define it for yourself and be explicit about it. Like, state it out loud that is not my success. Like, having a VP title is not my success criteria. Having a happy life, having time to turn off my devices, or having an ability or freedom to say no is my success criteria. I think that is really important, defining what success means to me and what normal means to me.
Thank you one more time.
Thank you.
Everyone for coming.